Hey guys, it's Chad with carbcue. Spring is here. We've broken out the smoker and it's time to start cooking again. Today, we're going to cook a pork butt and you're in for a treat. If you're new to the cooking scene or the barbecue scene, pork butt is one of the most forgiving cooks that you can do. We highly recommend it to start. And if you're not new to the scene, you've been barbecuing for 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, you know that pork butt is a very rewarding meal to cook. It's inexpensive. You can typically pick up an 8 to 9 pound pork butt for less than 20 bucks. It feeds a ton of people, so invite your friends over. And it's very, very forgiving. It's very hard to mess up a pork butt. So we're obviously going to start by taking this pork butt out of the package. And then what may not be so obvious is that you need to dry it off. There's a lot of excess blood and fluids on the pork, and we want to dry that off as quickly as we can once we take it out of the package. Once we're done drying off our pork butt, we're going to start the trimming process. Now, on a pork butt, there's not a whole lot to trim. There's a lot of intermuscular fat. A lot of this fat that you see on the outside of the pork butt doesn't need to be trimmed off because it's going to render during the cook. Now, on the bone side of the pork butt, there are two muscles that meet. And in between those two muscles, there's a lot of fat. And there's a gland in between the two muscles on the bone side. So you want to separate those two, trim with your knife in between them, and lift the top part of the pork butt. And we're going to trim some of that fat out. Now, once you get this fat trimmed out and the glands trimmed out between the two muscles closest to the bone, there's not a whole lot of trimming that needs to be done here. If you flip the pork butt over, you're going to see that it's got a fat cap on the bottom. If you're interested, you can take that fat cap off and it's going to yield more bark in your pork butt, but we don't find that necessary. We keep it on there because once you've got this thing rubbed and wrap it up, the rub and the rendered fat create an au jus that you can pour over the pork butt at the end and just make it fantastically delicious. So we're done with our trim here, and once we're done with the trim, we're going to move on to injection. Now, I've got a recipe below for your marinade that you're going to inject and for the rub. What you're going to want to do during the injection process is you're going to want to inject every inch or so through the pork butt. Now, the muscles are separated, so you're going to have to be careful, and there's also a bone in there. But we're going to inject evenly every inch. Now, once you get the injector into the pork butt, you can move it around, and you want to make sure that you are extracting the syringe as you are injecting it. That way, you get the entirety of the pork butt injected. Once we're done with injection, we're going to move on to rubbing. Now, you'll note in this video, I made a mistake and I actually rubbed the pork before I injected it. So flip those two around, inject, and then rub, and then your rub will not go to waste. Now that the pork's injected, we're going to move on to the rub. I've got a recipe below. There's about 15 ingredients in this rub. This is Chris Lilly's recipe. I'll include a link to the recipe below on his site, and it'll give you both the rub and the injection recipe. So as you can see, we're going to rub this pork butt extremely liberally, making sure that we cover all sides. The bottom part that has the fat cap, you want to make sure that you get a heavy coating on that because, as I mentioned before, the rub and the rendered fat will create this wonderful au jus that you can pour on over the pork butt after you pull it. Now, once we get the pork butt completely rubbed, you're ready to go directly out to the smoker. We're going to smoke this pork butt at 250, and the reason we're cooking it at 250 today is because I don't have a ton of time. I need this to cook pretty quick. Typically, you would cook this at 225 for about 10 hours. If you've got an 8-pound pork butt, it's usually a minute and 15 seconds per pound. Today, it's going to go a little faster. It's probably going to be closer to an hour per pound on this pork butt. Now, I cooked it today for 250 for 4 hours. 275 for 2 hours, and then finished it off at 300 degrees.
All right, guys, it's been a couple hours, and we're going to check the pork butt. And actually, it's been about 4 hours. And after about 4 hours, you'll see that this starts drying out a little bit. So we're going to spritz it with a little bit of water and apple cider. Now, you can spritz this with whatever you want. When we spritz beef, we'll do water and Worcestershire sauce. When we do pork, you typically want to keep it sweet. So we use water and apple juice. We're gonna close that up for another couple hours, and we'll come back out and check on it. When it hits 165 internal, then we're gonna go ahead and wrap it. All right, guys, normally I cook this at 225, but today we're cooking at 250. I got a late start. I got this pork butt on around 10 o'clock, and I normally put it on about 6 in the morning. So to make up for the lack of time, I bumped the temperature up to 250. So we've been going about 6 hours now. I expect this to be about a 9-hour cook or so. This is an 8-pound pork butt. When we probe this, we want the center to be about 160, 165 before we wrap. So you can see this is at 159, 165, 151, 157. So it's close enough. I want this to be ready in 3 or 4 hours. So we're going to pull this off now, go ahead and wrap it, and then we'll throw it back on the smoker for another couple hours. All right, guys, we got the pork butt inside now. It's looking delicious. Got a great bark on it. So like I said, 160, 165, you want to pull that off. If the bark starts getting too crisp, then spritz it more frequently than I did, but this bark is looking great. So when we go to wrap this pork butt, we're going to lay our tin foil in a cross. You always want to double wrap. So, and we want to wrap this tightly. So we're going to pull this over, make sure it's wrapped really tight. And then we're going to put a second layer on here. We're going to come across the opposite way. All right, now this is wrapped and ready to go back on the smoker. All right, guys, we've got the pork butt wrapped up. Now, just as a precaution, I've cleaned the grill, but even with the grill being clean, if I put this foil on here like this, it's gonna stick. So to protect that, if these juices come out in here, that's fine. I can use the juices in the pan. So I'm gonna put that pan in there like that. We're gonna grab our thermometer again, and we're gonna pop this right in the center. I hit bone right there, so. All right, now we're gonna let this go another couple hours. Once you get it wrapped from 160 to 195, it's gonna take 2.5 to 3 hours. So we'll check back with you in 3.5 hours. All right, guys, as you can see, we bumped this heat up to 300 degrees. It's 6 o'clock. This thing's been cooking for 8 hours. We need to eat dinner before 9 o'clock tonight. So we bumped it up to 300 degrees when we wrapped it. And you can see here that we're showing that the probe is showing 194. So we're gonna open this up and we're gonna use our Javelin Pro Thermopen to check this out and see where we're at. So we're showing 196 there. It's probe tender. 192 there. It's not quite as probe tender. And then 185 on the side. So we're going to give this about another probably 15 to 30 minutes, and we'll come back out and check it again. All right, gang, we're looking about 203 on the main probe. So we're going to check those cooler spots from before. So we're 206 there. This was 188 before, 202, and then 193-ish. So we're gonna call that done. Now that your pork butt's done, you're gonna wanna rest it. You can rest it anywhere from 1 to 6 hours by putting it in a cooler. Fill your cooler with beach towels and close the lid.
That's going to keep the pork butt hot for as long as you need it to, up to 6 hours before your guests arrive.
As the pork butt's been resting for a couple hours, it's still going to be really, really hot. So make sure you get some cotton gloves and some nitrile gloves. It's still going to be warm through the gloves, but it won't burn you. So there's just two things left to do. Pull the pork and eat it. I'm going to show you how to make a quick sandwich that people are going to love. So as we get into the pork butt and open it up, you will see that there's a bunch of juice in the bottom of this. Save this juice. After we pull the pork, we're going to pour that juice over the meat. And that is delicious. It is rendered fat with the rub in it. It's delicious. So you can see that even though the pork's been resting for an hour, it is steaming. This is what your finished pork butt's going to look like. And you know that you cooked it right if you can pull the bone clean out. So, mission accomplished. Okay, I'm not going to pull the whole pork on camera, but I'm going to go straight to the money muscle here. I'm going to pull this. This is the best part of the pork. They call it the money muscle because in competition, this is what makes you the money. So to make this pork butt sandwich really simple, pick up some Mike's Hot Honey, some Carolina sauce, and if you like jalapenos, you can put jalapenos on there. I do like jalapenos, but no one else in the family does, so we didn't pull them out tonight. You're going to take a King's Hawaiian roll. You're going to put some of this pork on there. And these sandwiches are small, so you can eat as many as you want. Eat 2, 4, 6, whatever you feel like. Get some pork on there. We're going to drizzle it with some Mike's Hot Honey. All right, so we're going to drizzle a little Carolina sauce on there. And if you're so inclined, throw your jalapenos on there. Top it off with the bun. Smash it down. Oh, that's so good. This is a great recipe for anyone, beginner, intermediate, pro. We'll pull this pork and it'll feed a family of 10 or feed a family of 4 for 3 or 4 days. Links below to the recipes for the rub and the injection. And that's a wrap.